Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is 2 o'clock on the button, so we are going to go ahead and jump in and get started. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Craig O'Neill, and I have my guest and colleague today, Michael Catul. Michael, go ahead and say hello.
How are we doing today, Craig?
We're doing really good.
I
We already
know.
established that, but now for the sake of our guest's attention, we'll discuss it one more time.
And I hope all of our guests are having a good day too, because it's wonderful.
It is. No, this month has been flying by. AutoTextMe's done some amazing things, leaps and bounds on a few features in particular that we will have a chance to show you today. But we're going to be focusing a little differently into the context of specific tips within the tool, 5 tips to be exact. And we're going to talk about those. We do, I do like to open up just with that poll that we put in front of you during the registration process. And I like to share these results. I like to also work off these results as we construct these webinars so we know what topics are important to, where people are struggling, where people are using the tool. And the question we asked in this case is, what's the most challenging phase of the workflow? Being workflow enthusiasts that we are, this is a topic we care about. And I loved seeing some of these answers. It's really split pretty evenly all around the area, except for maybe the pickup portion. Only a couple people indicated that that was a challenging part of the visit. We can discuss some of those things, but I think where we focus today, we're going to be talking about really all the stuff in the middle of the workflow. It doesn't matter which end we begin. And Michael, would you say that this is probably indicative of the type of questions that we're getting?
And it usually is, yeah. And for some, I mean, we do have some that have workflows that actually start with check-in and ready. Yeah. And actually corrected a shop today that had that in a meeting where we actually put together a full workflow and got back into it. So
interesting. Yeah,
right on topic with what we'll be doing today.
Awesome. So back to the 5 tips. What are these 5 tips? Well, we're going to go through a couple of them here, but I'm going to summarize very quickly. First thing we're going to talk about is predefining some expectations and how the tool can apply in those. Some things about automating the workflow, how we can use the workflow to communicate, how we can mitigate the amount of notifications that we're getting, reduce some of the chaos and noise that we're getting in the shops, and then how to follow up with purpose in the tool. So let's dive into those tips. We're going to start with the first one, which is predefining your expectations. And this goes right to the point that if you're not sure how the visit with the customer is going to pan out or the way things are going to flow, I promise you, your customer doesn't either. And a lot of times it puts the customer in a position where they're in the driver's seat and they're the ones sort of determining outcomes. And that's not necessarily the goal. We want to have a clear objective up front. And AutoTextMe has some things that help you do this. We talk all the time, and I know Michael's expert at this as well, of setting expectations up front in the visit. So we're going to look at we're going to jump in the tool, and that we're going to do this repeatedly on each of these tips. We're going to swing in the tool here, and we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do to help you set those expectations better. This goes beyond the conversation that you're having up front with the customer. That's step 1, though. Let's be clear. How you communicate with your customers on the phone, whenever they're making an appointment, whatever medium that is, that's your opportunity to let them know what to expect when they drop their car off, how to communicate best with you. What you'll want to do in AutoTextMe is reinforce those things. And I'm going to jump into our newest element here, the text manager. This is our newest piece that we put in about, 2 weeks ago now, I think, Michael?
Yeah, it's actually about a week and a half.
Sure.
Time's flying by, though. We're almost at the end.
It is. And this is much more familiar interface. And most of our users that have discovered this feature now, this is where we're going to manage text. The reason I wanted to pop in it today is because we kept this fully functional with all of the features that you're familiar with in AutoTextMe. And the one I'm talking about right now are the predefined outbound text. If you do not see that button, that right there on the bottom of my screen, that simply means you don't have any predefined outbound text already set up in the system. This is something your administrator login can do. And basically the way this works is you can just click on something and then you can send that message to the customer in a few short clicks. And I made one that's way too long. Look at that. I made a long one.
Wow.
Here, we'll just do the hours. There we go. Send text. Are you sure you want to send this message? Yeah, sure. Multiple phone numbers? No, I don't. I just want to send it to the one. Remember, you can do group text here too. Wee-hee. So we'll just do it there. Send text out the door, right? Click, click, done. That's what you want with this stuff.
Another thing that works really well with that though, Craig, is the typing. It's going to
Oh,
predict as you
yes.
type. So if you type the first few letters of something that is going to come up in the predictive, you don't even have to hit the drop down, type the first couple letters. It'll pull up that message. You can click on it
Mm-hmm.
and you can send it right out.
Yep. I just started typing the words in the directions here, and it doesn't even need to be the first keyword. If I type Main Street and that's in there, boom, it's going to filter that out for you. Excellent point, Michael. Click and send. There you go. Where do you set that up? It's in your administrator menu. You're going to go into workflow setup for this. The workflow setup page, if it's dealing with communication, is probably going to be in workflow setup. And you just scroll down right here to predefined outbound text. Click on that. And here you can see all of these items that I have in here, including my way too long transmission fluid note. Look at me go. Right. So really simple. You add a text. You can even copy paste stuff in here. If you have some notes already built out in another page, just copy paste them right in. That's really, really a quick way to get it in here. Otherwise, just type out your message right here. Now, why do I mention this in the upfront part for predefining our expectations? If there's something you want to say to your customers at the beginning of every visit, aside from what we have already built into the check-in message, put it right in here, because you know full well that a lot of times the same check-in message for pre-existing customers might not be as appropriate, but sometimes there's something you just want new customers only to see. And having that at your fingertips is really useful. Predefined outbound text in workflow setup, highly, highly recommend. The other thing that I've seen shops do related to this, again, we're still in workflow setup here, is customizing your appointment confirmation messages. Right there, once a customer has made an appointment, we can establish some details here. In my case, I'm also showing that you can set date and or time parameters now in these appointment messages. If you've been on this tool for over 3 or 4 years, as some of you have, then you'll remember when there was no modification of the date and time. So we added these brackets to this appointment section. If you don't have date and time indicators in here, we will use our default message. But if you do put these brackets in, notice in my case, I don't actually schedule appointments in my example shop anyways for specific times of the day. Everything's a drop off. So I would just say your vehicle is now scheduled for service on the day, and I'm giving the same time that they can drop their vehicle off before. And there's a whole drop off sequence that we can perhaps spell out even further in our predefined notes. Make sense? Very good. So that's one of my favorite areas. Now, confirmations occur automatically once the appointment's made. Reminders also go out. So the reminder is sometimes a little bit of a better spot for additional recommendations. For example, if you wanted to have the reminder, give your address, for example. You can even have other sorts of links in here typically. If you have a pre-canned link ready to go with your Google Maps directions, and that's all your customer needs to do, it's a great spot for a predefined outbound as well. Nice little touch to make sure your customers are getting where they need to be.
It's a great place to remind your customers not to park in front of the garage door.
Yeah. Yep. And we all know that the yellow paint on the cement and the signs on the garage door windows aren't working.
Not enough.
Yeah. Arguable whether this will have an impact on that bane of our existence. Now, one more piece, the check-in message. For expectations for a visit, this is where I really like to add in. If you've worked with us any time in the past 6 to 8 months, I think just about every new store that we've worked with, this is a part of the check-in message that I put in there, that please feel free to communicate with us by text. You could even go further than that. You could say the best way to reach us is by text. Adding these little elements at multiple points and touches just go to reinforce those expectations and get your customers funneled.
I take it one step further with you, Craig. Sure. I add one more line after that. That is, okay. I will text you again when a text starts the inspection of your vehicle. So I'm giving them the what's happening and the next time to expect communication from me, so that they know you're communicating with me now. And then I'm going to hear something again when something happens. So I don't have to call you to find out, because you already told me you're going to text me again. Yes. And we're going to touch on that automation that's going to make that very simple in a minute. Absolutely. But making sure on the check-in message or the inspection message, when it says, if you open up your inspection message right now, Craig, it should actually have the new format, if I'm not mistaken.
know. Maybe Michael Catullo needs to do some consulting with Craig's Awesome Auto.
Yes.
An estimate will follow soon.
An estimate will follow soon. I use, I will send the report when it's ready, but something along that verbiage, letting the customer know, hey, I'm doing the inspection now. Here is the next thing that's going to happen, and I'm going to text you when this is ready. So you're giving those customers more information than simply just your vehicle's checked in. Okay, that might prompt a question.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Michael. One other area, and you got me thinking on this piece too, because I didn't plan on this part for this sequence, but the text message for that DVI, many of you are aware that this, if you're using our tool for the inspection portion, you can have that message spelled out however you want. And this is one of those nice pieces. Like if you don't want them calling you right away for an estimate, people can indicate that in here as well. If you will be reaching out with a separate link for an estimate, you can tell them, watch for that link. Lots of little add-ons in here that you do, because this is a sequence. We go through a certain check-in, inspection, estimating, and then we share the inspection results type of a thing. Most shops anyways. We can capture all of that in any of these templated messages.
And one thing, Craig, we want to remind people, we do want to avoid things like click here, click the link. We don't want words like link and click in these text messages, because we do not want them getting flagged. And those are kind of keywords that they look for when it comes to sending a link to a customer, saying click here or follow this link.
Yeah, and you will see this word link in brackets, but that isn't going to show up to the customer that way. This bracketed code is replaced with the link for you. And what Michael's referring to is spot on, because texting has changed. We've talked about this in several of our other webinars. You can go back and look for those on YouTube anytime. Texting, we don't want to see filtration of messages, and it looks spammy if you start saying, please click the link or click the link or click here too, or any of the languages that involve doing that. Just mention what you have. People know what to do with links. Most of us.
Exactly.
All right. So that is predefining expectations. There are a number of ways you can do that in the tool. Hope some of those are very helpful to you. Let's move on into automation. And this is right down into that concept of less doing. Actually, Chris made a recommendation. Chris is always making book recommendations. I really appreciate that about him. This one's a really short, really fast read. It's called Less Doing, More Living. And it is not necessarily one I recommend picking up, because I can summarize it very neatly for you. But you may want to do this anyways. It's up to date. It's modern, deals with applications, deals with a lot of automation. Automate whatever you can. The idea is that we've got only so many mental resources that we have, and service advisors know this better than anyone. There is a lot to go, and we just do not have the brain calories to do it all. And that's what we're trying to mitigate. So that is why automation inside of the tool becomes so important. It can take something off of your shoulders and still keep things up to date. The functions inside of Auto Text Me that enable this are, well, multifaceted to say the least. But the first thing that me and Michael want to talk about on this is using the workflow to communicate with your customers. And that is straight on into making this workflow what we call loud on certain statuses. And we run across it all the time where people have the full workflow completely silent.
And I'm afraid, but this boils down to your very first point, though, Craig, is setting expectation. Because one of the main reasons why I hear I don't want to text the customers what's going on is because I don't want them to know when we started and when we stopped. And I don't want them to think that we're going to have the car ready at a certain time. I'm like, well, wait a second. That all boils down to setting a proper expectation at the beginning of the visit. If the customer's aware when their car is going to be done, give an estimated of time, when we're going to contact them, you should have no problem contacting them throughout the process to let them know you're on track.
Yep. Michael, spot on. I had a shop this week raise that concern regarding the workflow and the text messages that are programmed on some of them. It's like, well, if we get it done and we let them know it's done by automatically, then if it was, 3 hours that we build, but we got it done in 1 hour, they're going to know we didn't take 3 hours on it. It's like, whoa, are you suggesting, wait, right? I don't argue with people on this, but I'll make the point in the webinar because it's our opinion here, but we need to get better at just communicating when it's relevant, hiding things or even just trying to uh, communicate something that isn't necessarily true later, it does not make sense to me. We want to be honest and timely.
The idea is transparency. And that's what allows the customer to feel comfortable with our shop, is having the transparency that matches the expectation that we're setting forth at the beginning.
Yep.
When that transparency is going hand in hand with with what we're doing in the expectations, the customer is going to be happy.
Yeah. And if you're dealing with price objections or the fact that hourly numbers don't correlate to actual time, this is an opportunity to change that customer's perspective of how we bill in this industry. And I know it's a painful conversation and it's very complicated. I've had arguments with people in my day in the past. Once I got away from looking at the hourly rate and even presenting those numbers when I'm in a sales process, you can start focusing on what we're really selling, which is knowledge. And once you get the customers coming in your door that understand that philosophy, that, hey, we realize that we're paying for a procedure. We aren't just paying for time, because what would happen? We give our stuff to that low skilled technician who's going to take longer. What are you going to pay more? No, nope. It's all to their protection and benefit that we do things the way we do. And yeah, it's the system we have for billing. Point is, communicate in that workflow on anything that makes sense to communicate to. Really, 3 to 4 to 5 loud statuses is all you need. And we'll touch on that again here in one of our further tips, but you do this simply. Turn on or off any status in workflow setup. You will, of course, see the parentheses around the ones that are quiet. Notice I don't actually send a text on the estimating status. They have the DVI to chew on typically while I'm building an estimate. That's my strategy. Some people will always get the DVI sent only after the estimate. However you do it, it's up to you. Certain statuses are just for internal purposes. Now, that's the communication piece of automating. By updating the status, you fulfill that communication void at the same time. The customer gets touched, their patience level goes up. Actually, their stress goes down, and you can count on them being happier until you can connect with them again. Even if they're in the lobby, I still text them on this stuff. Now, as if communication wasn't the only piece of automation, we threw in some more. The AI setup piece is up here in your admin menu. And this is where the auto assign and auto update features come into the equation, because dispatching, I understand, can be a free for all in some shops. I'm not a fan of it. You can have tickets automatically assigned to people who are engaging them, service writers or technicians, based on their actions in various sheets. These are safe to turn on, even if you already have dispatching occurring in your shop management system, because we do not trigger any automatic assignments if someone's already assigned to the ticket. So this is basically the first touch. Make sure that that individual becomes the assigned party on those tickets. It does aid in some of the dispatching methods that I've seen out there, that where there isn't a shop foreman or there is nobody actually doing things, and the technicians get to literally pick and choose where they go next. Keeps track of what they're on, and it puts it into their tab and organizes it for them without anyone having to do anything. The most important one is the auto update. This is what triggers the automatic status update based on actions in the tool. And the most important one that we use for our inspection clients is, of course, the DVI status. By turning this one on to yes, what happens is the technician engages the DVI and it moves into the inspection status. Whenever I demonstrate this. Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
This is what allowed me to say, with confidence, I will text you when the tech starts the inspection of your vehicle. Because I know that as soon as the tech starts that DVI, it's going to automatically move that status to inspecting for me. So I feel confident in telling the customer that I'm going to text them when that happens, because I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
It just happens.
The biggest fear I see with service advisors when they start seeing statuses like, oh, how am I going to keep this all up to date? You're not. And if it is your job to do that, that's the full-time job. You're not going to be very productive on other things. You need help keeping these statuses true. And that involves full team participation. And the technician can be an unwitting partner in this just by opening the DVI and touching something on it. Perfect. Now, that is the status going into inspection. There is one more piece to it that I personally love. And this is the auto assign updates page one more time here. DVI sign off. So when the technician signs off, what status do we want it to move to? So now it moved into the inspection status when they start the inspection. Where's it going to go when they mark the inspection complete? for me, it's pretty obvious. We're going to move it into the estimating status. There might be some other step in some other shops, but this is probably 95% of you.
Mm-hmm.
That is right there. The work order sign off. We can do work order status updates when a technician clocks in on a job. Any of these timers, these are well documented. We have a lot of stuff on the website, but take advantage of them. The only time I don't use work order status update is if you're in a situation where, hey, like an oil change is occurring when you're doing an inspection. I don't like that bouncing in and out of the servicing status. I only like work order updates for the servicing status when a technician's actually engaged in the final authorized amounts. And notice these are tied to where the work order exists. They're tied to where the DVI exists. So when you do see these on that auto assign and update page, what we're actually referring to is the status that DVI is associated with. And that's a key thing. Work order sign off and all the sign off ones can go to any status, but these ones here, it matters where you placed the DVI.
Can you show them? Can you show people how to assign those buttons to the statuses?
Excellent point. That's again in workflow setup. And let's take a look at the work order status one, for example. I put it on my servicing status. All you need to do to make sure the work order is associated with that status is make sure that box is ticked and hit save.
And just remember, whenever it is associated with a status, it's always going to fall to the right of the status you associated with. That's why when you look at the inspection, when you look at the inspection status, it is going to be marked that the DVI is associated with inspection. Hence, the DVI button is to the right of that status. The same thing with the work order in our QC.
And notice when I'm on the servicing status, the work order button's what appears as, and this is a dynamic button. So you're going to have easier time opening the work order when it's on the servicing status. One of the techniques that I use.
I actually train the text that way because I always want the text moving that service button. So when the text move that status to servicing, it's going to change that button to work order so they can open up the work order directly. When I train them that way, it gets them in the habit of that I have to move the status to servicing to get work order to open. It's a very brilliant and simple way to get the text moving that status.
Absolutely. Now, one other piece that I like to automate is the pushing of a DVI result into the shop management system. This isn't true for all integrations, but most of our cloud-based integration partners, pretty much, I think it's level 4 and up on this piece for the DVI. You would see a button up here that says push for the DVI. That can be automated. That can be automated from integration setup. The shops that do have integration, you will see an integration setup tab here. And if integration does enable the user to, here, I'll actually pop open one of my examples here for you and pull that on the screen. You'll see exactly what we're looking at here. Integration setup. Let's take a look here. So you can see auto push DVI. Right now it's no in this test shop, but you can turn that on anytime that you need to. And that means that when the technician marks that inspection complete, the results will push automatically into that shop management system. Very useful. Protractor users, Shopware users, TechMetric users. I believe Omnique as well. Now, that is the DVI piece. The other thing is the Rainy folder. And this is automation on the other side of a visit. This is for after the customer has left, there's outstanding items on that DVI. And if we go and pull some examples here, I ought to have a few.
Like real quick, before you dive into that, can we show what you meant by authorized work on the DVI?
Yes, for sure. Authorized
because
work
that is the key step to this. And it comes in part of the workflow with the communication. Again, this falls into the communication because when I am going over this DVI with the customer over the phone to get authorizations, I want that DVI up and I'm talking to them about what I see on the DVI. We're going to notice these on this yes, no buttons on the far right. These buttons are going to let us know what is authorized and what is not authorized. So when I'm discussing this DVI with the customer and I'm going over the pricing as I hit the points and the customer says, yes, I would like that done, I am marking that box. I'm marking that toggle to yes. What that's going to do is mark that line authorized on the DVI. So when we feed that rainy day folder with DVIs with unauthorized work, it's what is left unmarked that was marked yellow or red that is going to filter into there.
Yes, and this can be reviewed later, right?
Yes, we can be reviewed later. but it's going to be a lot easier when it comes to automation.
Exactly. And this
If
is
it's
where the
being
automation
fed
piece
properly.
is. You have right at the top of the screen, this is to automate the rainy folder. You don't want to tick this box and have these messages go out automatically. And you can program it, right? This is 9 weeks after the visit. Any outstanding inspection items that are on this list we're going to send a templated message. We give you full control over building that template. It's basically sending them the inspection report again, with the emphasis being on the items that were left unauthorized. If you don't have that ticked off, this is something you can do manually, but you still would have to come in here. You're going to spend more of those brain calories. You're going to have to click on these items and review it. You're going to have to compare the history in the shop management system. You're going to have to go through and see if that job was done or not. And then
it's a lot of work if you don't take care of it up front the easy way.
Yep. The easy way is to use it, like Michael's saying, in that sales presentation that you're having with the clients. If you're not leveraging the inspection in the sales portion, well, we can talk further on that.
That's a whole other topic. But when you're leveraging it, you're marking it as it's happening, then you're feeding the machine good information. You can turn on automation, and it's a very simple process from there. But I don't mind. It all boils down to that simple step of marking those things authorized or not.
I love the idea of this being automated. I don't hate the idea of doing this manually, but this is a job. And it's a job that requires somebody's full attention if you are going to do it this way. And you can personalize these messages and send very pertinent items on here. We help you keep it organized. That's a huge portion of the task already. But being able to fully automate it means that that's just one last thing we have to do. The thing is like Michael's saying, we want it to be relevant. It has to be relevant if we're going to automate this to the customer. And that just involves you while you're doing the sales piece, using those yes. Awesome, Michael. Good points. Now, that is automation in the tool. There are several other things that are automated. We're going to come back into a few more, but let's move forward into something we already started scratching at just a little bit. That's communicating with statuses. We've talked about that already externally with the clients by sending a text message. We also talked about the silent statuses that are better for internal purposes. Most of the questions that we get on internal dialogue are related somehow to a status on a vehicle. Think about the times your technician's standing at your counter. This is not one of those times where they're just there to shoot the breeze, although that happens. We're usually having a conversation about what to do next if something's got all of its parts. Is this authorized? What is authorized? All these various things. You can rephrase almost every one of the questions that are most commonly asked there. And it's like, what's the status on the vehicle that I'm interested in here? What's the status on this? And when a technician's looking in auto text me, they should be able to interpret all of that right within the tool. And that's where I will go right back into the tool here again.
And Craig, while you're going into the tool, I'm going to make a quick statement about that.
Sure.
Another thing that I find very interesting is this need for notifications.
And we're coming into that too hard.
It's a very strong need, but a lot of times the notification is so that somebody knows what's happening.
Yep.
The problem is the workflow itself is the notification in this point. And when we go to that communication key, this is where using the workflow internally is going to allow our techs and our advisors to know what's happening based on these status moves.
Let's take a look.
Simpler than any other form of notification or a separate message that has to go out. Because again, having to do a separate step is extra work that we don't want to do.
Right. Now let's look at this in terms of communicating with that workflow, because what Michael's talking about is absolutely spot on. We're going to talk about this in our fourth tip on mitigating the notifications even further. This is I like baseball analogies, and one of my favorite things, especially growing up, was little league time, and just that thrill and excitement of being in a situation where there's base runners on the base. I'm in second base position, and if that ball comes to me, there's this many outs, and I know exactly what to do with the ball, who I'm going to throw it to. Even the pitcher knows what to do in case the ball goes to the first baseman. It's amazing when you watch a well-practiced team do that, and you can read the signs on a workflow very simply as well. Here in Craig's Awesome Auto, we have 2 vehicles assigned to our technician here. I actually am going to shift my example just a little bit here so that we can make good use of this. A technician that has 2 different priorities on 2 different statuses should be able to look at this and organize this screen in such a way that we're not going to be confused about where we need to go. I am sorting the screen by priority. My priorities are listed here as well. I have priority 1 and priority 2, but notice priority 1 is in estimating. If something's in estimating, is there anything I can do currently on that car? Maybe there is, and you can take a look at the work order. But priority number 2 is in a status clearly labeled waiting for tech. So if I know priority 1 is already there, I can confidently make a decision without having to go interrupt anybody, stand there while the service advisor's on the phone, chat anything even, and just click on the status here, update it, move into servicing, and go to town working on this vehicle. It means everything's here and it's ready to go. I've got a lift. I'm moving on to it. We're just not going to waste any time at all.
Craig, this is where the void of the middle of the workflow comes into play, I think, the most.
100%.
The number one thing that I remember being in a shop as a service advisor, service manager, as a tech, was people coming in and going, hey, what is going on with this vehicle? Did we get an authorization on those jobs? Are parts coming? When are parts going to get here? It's those key questions, because the tech wants to know, do I have time to pull this other car in and diag it? Or should I start tearing this down for the parts that are on their way? Where am I going next? So they're asking that question for a legitimate reason. The advisor is telling them what's going on, but there's a lot of back and forth to the front, to the back to get that information across.
Absolutely.
Where if the status isn't estimating, we know the advisor's estimating. When it moves to waiting on approval, we know the estimate's been sent. We're waiting for the customer to get back. When it goes to waiting on parts, and I set that timer for waiting on parts, the tech is going to know, hey, this vehicle's waiting on parts. I have 1 hour. I have 2 hours until the parts come. Now I can make my determination. I'm going to tear this down. Parts will come. I'll put them on. Or, hey, those brakes came in for this other job. I'm going to pull that in. I'm going to put those brakes on real quick, and I'll be done with it by the time my parts come for the next job. No one had to go and tell them, hey, parts are ordered. They're going to be here in 2 hours. They just looked at their tablet. They saw the status. It's marked on how long they're going to come, and they know what to do.
Let's talk about the parts portion for a second. Like you're saying, Michael, this is a really cool thing. That this is always, whenever we're demoing the tool too, this always gets a lot of attention because people are acutely aware of the problem this solves. The vendor list. Now, it says vendor list in our tool. I'll show you where to customize this, but this can be literally anything that you're tied up or waiting for. A lot of times I see people want to use an on hold status or some other variety of statuses, and it clutters up and makes a very long workflow. But you can actually encompass a lot of these sort of things why you would have to wait right here. So if I could even technically do without that waiting on text status. Since it's a silent status, it doesn't need any separate communication. I can represent it here. But waiting on, let's just pick a vendor here. We'll say advanced, and I can say exactly how long, hour wise, that's going to be in. Or if it's a nice 30-minute delivery, boom. I know that that's what this is going to take. Does that help a technician make a decision on this page? Sure beats sitting on that estimating status. If a service advisor failed to move that forward on a status into this thing, they could have made that wrong choice on where to move on to next. If the new was only 30 minutes to get the part, you know what I'd do as a technician if it's priority one? That's racked up. I'm pulling the old part off, and that new part's showing up in the door right when I need to have it. And that is just magical when those things line up.
We missed that point where the tech didn't see that, pulled the next car in because he thought it was still in estimating. And then the part shows up and the guy's going, hey, I need this one done.
Yep.
I didn't know the parts were going to be here that quick.
Now I've got the hoist tied up with this one. Yeah.
It's
kind of thing.
Communication. And you're doing it solely with the workflow.
Yep. Authorizations occur. First thing a service advisor will want to do, and this I would just love to be able to repeat all day long. After you get those approvals, you have to update these statuses so that everyone else that depends on them understands the current need of that vehicle. It might have everything it needs. Exactly. Maybe it's just lube oil filter all day on that thing. That's fine. That means you jump and skip a step right to there. But if it is something that requires parts, this is fantastic. Stores with part managers. One of the things I want to talk to regarding this tip, remember, is very specifically status filters. I love working with the stores who have one person whose job it is to take authorized work, order all the parts, and indicate when all the parts are here. Let me show you what we can do with the filters on our workflow. If I am responsible for parts as a parts manager here, I might only want this one status to ever show up on my screen. That means that no ticket is going to show up on my view of this workflow until it's in a status I care about. All the other statuses can be hidden from sight. And that's true for technicians as well. If I'm a technician that wants to exercise a filter and have a cleaner screen, maybe I'm not a good fielder in the infield and I just get overwhelmed simply and really just need to focus on one thing. I can just have it show up for check-in and waiting on tech, right? And that'd be fine for me. Maybe waiting on parts as well. Here, let me go back in there. I would do probably requires parts as well as check-in and waiting on tech. So anything in any of those statuses is going to show up on my screen. Guys, these are sticky settings. That means every time I come back into this screen and refresh it, it will remember those preferences for you. You will not have to constantly reestablish them.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
And again, for service advisors, that estimating status is a strong one. I walk away from my desk and I'm out in the parking lot for 20 minutes talking to a customer. I come back in, I want to know, where's my attention need to be focused immediately? And 90% of the time, it's getting an estimate built and out to the customer. That should always be your number one priority at that point. So I can come in, filter, hit my estimates, see what I have in estimating. And if I'm using my timers on my estimating status, if I've got a green, yellow, red, 3 in estimating, a green, yellow, red, I can see which ones have been sitting there the longest, where my attention needs to go first. Communication, automated with nothing I have to do. It's going to let me know where my attention needs to go first.
Let me stop you on those timers a second, because this is the last point I want to make on this tip, which is that you can do countdown, no timer at all, or count up timers on any of these statuses. And I'm a huge fan of the countdown timer precisely for the reason that you indicated. You have these colored indicators that are going to help me know if I need to react to something that's becoming more of an issue. You get to, yeah.
Sorry, real quick, while you're in this point though, also notice the associate parts vendor list.
Yes, that needs to be on.
Has to be on a down timer.
Yep.
But you click on that. You can add that parts list to any status. It can be
only one status, but it can be any status.
But it can't be any particular status. That's what it can be, any particular status. But it has to be a countdown timer on that associate parts vendor list.
Yep. The associate parts vendor dropdown that we showed you with the parts vendor won't appear unless it's a down tick timer. It requires that field input. Exactly. One of the things I would like to see, I actually, I think I have an active feature request for this somewhere, is multiple options for dynamic statuses on the workflow. I think it'd be a powerful add-on for the tool. But what you see here is the ability, and this was added last year sometime, I believe, is the ability to customize the timer. They used to default to an hour regardless. You can set your own timer for each individual status that does have a down tick timer. Even though you don't get that drop down for parts vendors on all statuses, you can have any timer you want. And down here, you have a further utility to indicate what color the timer is going to be. What time that button turns orange, I have it set to 10 minutes. And what time for red? 5 minutes. So by changing my estimate status to include a down tick timer, default of 20 minutes, might not be long enough, but for the average estimate, it might be just fine, depending on your shop. Transmission estimates would not go together that quickly, usually. Some of them are pretty pattern failures, so good. But now I click on that estimating status, and notice what I get is the option to choose the amount of time. And if I know I'm going to need about 40 minutes to estimate on this thing, that's exactly what I'm going to do. This is useful, like Michael said. You wander back, you get distracted, you need to figure out where you are. You can refocus your view down onto this and know exactly what you need to do. Estimate, get that stuff moving forward. Ball's in your court. All right, vendor list. We talked about dynamic statuses. We talked about status filters and screen sorting. I will just mention again that screen sorting piece. I highly, highly, highly recommend your technicians that are using their tablets sort by priority descending. I think it's the most pertinent one for them. Please be free to check all the other ones you like too, but I find that to be the most helpful. And my advice for service advisors is to make sure you're showing repair orders. I don't actually have repair orders in my non-integrated instance here, but repair order descending is a great one. You can, of course, have the RO numbers show up on this. Here, I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. And on this one, I'll do 5.
Greg, after you get through this, the last thing I want you to hit on is show them where to edit the vendors list.
Boom. Oh, thank you, Michael. Yes, I would have absolutely overlooked that. Let's do that right now. Vendor list is actually set up with the workflow setup. It's under that drop down there, and it's the coolest button because it's got a wrench on it. So associate parts vendors. All you need to do is add a title to something right here. That is one you frequently use. If it's you got Napa or whatever you're doing, you can do that, and you can do what I did here too, and just say whatever you need to say. Notice I have that on hold option there, and you can delete them as well.
It also works for sublets if it's going to
Sublet's
Joe's
huge.
Collision, the machine shop. You can put the sublets, how long before
You've got regular sublet vendors put their
Yes.
actual names in here too, so you can isolate specifically which one.
where it is and how long before you expect it back. It just keeps track of where these cars are.
Point is, we are communicating with that workflow without having to chat, without having to do anything else. These statuses are the best means of communication. And this goes right into the tip that I am absolutely most passionate about, which is mitigating notifications. Michael was scratching at this a minute ago as well. What we're after is reducing noise and chaos. And this goes right into this book again too. This was a good point by the author, and less doing more living, and that is that it's not actually a task that you need to do if there's nothing you can do about it right now, and that is what notifications are. It makes it seem like there's something important you have to do, but if you actually aren't in a position to do anything about it, it's added noise. It creates stress, and I will tell you, in my years as a technician, there is no way I am going to wipe my hands off, burn through a set of gloves or what else to go and pick up a tablet to see why it chimed at me.
And you don't want your tech doing that.
No.
Because if a tech is in the middle of doing something, he's torquing down the bell housing bolts and he stops what he's doing to look at something and and then he goes back and he misses torquing 2 bolts. Now you got a leaker coming back. You never want your tech being interrupted from what he's doing.
And that's the technician. I've always said the same thing too. You interrupt technicians, you get comebacks. You interrupt a service advisor. What do you get?
You end up with something getting dropped. You end up an estimate not getting sent, a DVI not getting sent. Yeah. You end up with, they thought they did it, and then an hour later goes by and it's like, why didn't I get anything back?
The parts that don't get ordered, the items that never make it onto the invoice, you name it. Interrupting service advisors should be considered as horrible an idea as interrupting a technician. In our shop, you never bothered the transmission rebuilder if he's in the middle of a valve body. Not once. That is like a sin. If you interrupt this man while he is working on the brain of that transmission, you're not going to get anything productive from him, for one. And you may have just created a very costly comeback. That's something that I can't stress enough. Now, how do we get away from notifications? And wait, doesn't auto text me have a whole bunch of them? Well, let's look at this. User settings is jam packed with some options for you on this stuff. I'm going to clear these notifications here. That notification bell is fine by me. This doesn't bother me. And when we say we're going to notify you and auto text me, that's all we do. We put a little notification in that bell. User settings, this is where you have the option to establish push notifications. I get this question almost daily. Hey, how can I make it chime, beep, whistle, whatever, when something needs my attention? It's like, yeah, well, you can do a push notification. You can turn on the browser notification as well. Please make sure you've set those permissions. Notifications have to be enabled at the browser level. And it also needs to be enabled on your operating system. And that works for Android and Windows really well. Some newer Apples are able to do push notifications. I think their newer iOS does.
The latest version, I think, finally has that.
Yeah, they were late to the game on that, but that's all right. The point is, why do you need that bell, chime, or whistle if you're routinely going to be looking at this hub of communication that we have? Even service advisors, that text manager now is making it so easy. There's even a filter on here so that we can just look at received messages. So we can see it very clearly if there's any that we've received recently that need my attention.
And Craig, we could pull that out, right?
I'm sorry?
We can pull that out.
The text manager?
Yeah.
Good question. That exists as a modal right now, but my dream for that, I don't know when it's going to be, but the chat tool has the ability to be pulled out into its own tab entirely. I expect the same will happen with text manager. I don't have details on when that is. Common feature request out of the gate.
And again, I'm gonna bring in the one other point that we like to drive home, Craig, is that advisors at this point in time should at least have two monitors at their
Oh,
stations.
please, yes. Goodness. If you
I'm
have
just going to
turn
bring that
down
up
two
at this point
monitors.
because it helps with the communication. It allows you to have your auto text me on one screen and your shop management system on another screen, and you've got everything you need to run your day.
Yep. Honestly, 3 screens is how I operate now, and I'd have a hard time going back to 2. But
You're special, Craig, though.
it's just the way it is. Yeah. But no, the notifications, service advisors and technicians is very different. Technician notifications are fewer. Technicians do have the same flexibility, though, to go into user settings and they can go and set their own notification preferences. Notice there's only 4 for the technician. And this is the button that I do want to draw attention to just because I know a lot of you asked for it, and that's the subscribe devices. You can test your push notifications on any device. Not always do I want it on a tablet. Maybe I'm okay with getting a Windows notification on my laptop. You can have 3 different devices signed in anywhere. Doesn't matter. You can have push notifications go on all 3. I know techs that do this. They literally, their cell phone, their tablet, and their laptop is all chiming at them every time an authorization or an assignment makes it onto their screen. Drives me nuts. They seem to like it. Won't go there.
Too much noise.
It's too much noise, folks. Do not rely on reactive notifications to things. Go back to the screen at key intervals. This is what we do with our own smart devices anyway. You've all caught yourself in this habit. You've got a moment, maybe you're waiting in line somewhere, or someone else has pulled out their phone nearby and you didn't want to feel left out. You go in here and you just do what? You check the things that you check because you want to check them. That's it. And because you know you need to. When we're in work mode, I don't want to be distracted by all the other noise in the world that also comes through these devices. Keep auto text me clean, keep your devices clean, and just come back here at regular times. I get done with a job, I wash my hands, I check my main screen on the tablet, and it, by statuses alone, will tell me everything I need to be doing next, as long as it's being kept up to date by the other team members. Now, priority is also established very simply, and this is how we keep technicians focused in this business is we establish a priority order and we preload. I've already shown you the priority listed there. The places that we can do this are in 2 places. If you're on the inspection tier package with Auto Text Me, this is going to be in set priority. You can pop these cards open. You can remove these anywhere. You can drag across different columns, and that's just live updated as we move through here on the technician's tablet. The other screen is TechFlow. This is on the innovative package where you're going to have the work order and you're going to have a full paperless system. And TechFlow gives you more assigned hours, clock time, and other things. This is the same concept, works exactly like set priority, except it goes a lot deeper. And this is the same principle. You can drag and drop these things. I've removed that assignment here. Let's move Joe Paluca over back to our guy Lee. And now he's back there. And notice the priority order is in real time. This is how we let our technician know what to do. No more running back and forth with different slips of paper or reshuffling things on their clipboard, folks. It's a brave new age. That should make sense, I hope. One thing else I do want to mention, we have on here, internal chat. We touched on it very briefly. How to use it well. This is something that I've seen teams abuse horribly, and it becomes a very useless piece if you let it just become a silly place where people are having strange conversations. And my advice is to use this only for things that need documented. Maybe you got a broken part you need to show your service advisor. Instead of walking up to the office and showing them the bad news, snap a picture and show it to them. There, you get the red notes, you get the verification there. Keep it pure by keeping it purely for the things that are really important, something that's an exception to a normal rule. Don't ask for, hey, is this authorized? Should I go on to this next? All those little questions that we would have to start reacting to can be answered in the workflow.
Exactly. You're getting that answer already from the workflow. Mm-hmm. You don't need to ask that through the chat.
And there is a nuclear option here. There is that little phone button there. If you have your devices set up with a microphone and permissions are allowed on the browser, you do need to make sure of that up here, microphone permissions. You can actually ring another device. My advice, though, use that also very sparingly and for urgent scenarios. If you need to interrupt a technician on something they're working on, you walk out there and you tell them still, especially if he's hard at work on something. If you're counting on a notification, a chime, or an alert to interrupt a technician, again, I think we've made that very clear on our opinions on that. We don't want chaos, and we definitely don't want too much noise.
No.
Now, our final tip is follow up with a purpose. And this is something AutoTextMe is increasingly specialized in. Any of you who've been with us, like I mentioned, some of you have been with us over 4 years on here, and that's awesome. And this is one of those areas that you probably remember seeing evolve very gradually. Let's take a look at what we're going to do. We're going to talk about thank you follow-ups, the reviews, service reminders, the new module, and also our scheduler. So really quick, you can go right into company setup on this, and we can close our chat. Notice how that does follow you across each screen. Very, very smart. Now, this is the follow-up message. I strongly encourage each of you go in here and make sure yours is established for the shop. This can be as simple. I'll break it down into the 3 levels we do it, right? The first thing is a simple thank you message, pure and simple. Doesn't need to include any links, just a basic message. That's phase 1. And you get to choose one day after at what time of day this goes out. Stage 2 is our multi-linked review page. This allows you to put different review pages with your links right there. And the same principle goes out one day after. At this time, you choose from the drop-down all those variables, and you can have any links in here. But this gives you the ability to build a page that is templated in the same fashion as the DVI. So this will be a familiar interface for your customers. If you're a text-to-pay client as well, you'll understand that the same format is used across the entire experience. So it becomes very familiar with the client. But this one, you can do a couple of different things. Build your own messages, get your appointment link in here so they can schedule. I can't tell you how many times I see people getting appointments from the thank you messages that include the ability to click on a reschedule button. This, if you're using our kiosk and scheduler, by the way, works beautifully with our kiosk. You can even do it in this little demo screen on this page. They can schedule their next visit with the same vehicle or any other, answer your questions. They can do any other jobs. If you have outstanding DVI items from the rainy day, it all shows up on there. Ties together all the components of the tool neatly, and you have to do virtually nothing to make this work once it's set up. There are shops out there I know that have people who would do this, where they would call clients, maybe even write thank you notes and that sort of thing. This day and age, it got a little easier, and I'm a big fan of this feature. So please take advantage of those. Now, the third phase of this, I'll just mention very quickly, is the customer score feature. This one allows you to vet out the customer's experience a little bit more before asking for the review. Kind of creates this tree of potential responses, and based on a 1 through 10 rating that they give you, you get to template any of the answers that you would have. You can then include the review link only in certain ones if you want, or right up front.
This is my favorite way of setting up. And part of the reason why is because not only for the review vetting and things of that nature, but for me, it's that ability for this information to come back to the advisor. Because that is where a lot of these tools that you get follow-ups up fall short. The manager gets an email about it. The manager addresses the customer who is unhappy, but that information does not make its way back to the advisor. Or when a customer gives a good score, doesn't get back to the advisor. When the customer uses the follow-up system and they give a bad score, the advisor, the manager who is addressing the bad score can put their notes right there with the private notes. And when the customer comes in, the advisor can pull up that red smiley face that's going to be next to the customer, see what happened, how we addressed it, what we offered. It's right there. But the thing that people forget is also having that green smiley face right there. When that customer comes in the next time and you say, "Hey, Joe, thanks for that good review last time you were in." Do you know what that does for how a customer feels when you thank them for giving you a good review the last time? That you actually, oh wow, they actually see that. They pay attention. It having that information at the advisor's hands where he can look at it as the customer's in front of him, it's invaluable. And again, it's also automated. You don't have to do anything to tell the advisor, "Hey, last time this guy was in, he was upset." It's automatically there for the advisor.
Absolutely. Now, one of the latest things that we did too, we've talked about this piece for a couple different things here. Well, we have reminders on here. I'm going to use one of my other test instances again. Let's go into this one here. And let's take a quick look. Oops, I'm sorry. Let's do this with our service advisor login. We're going to go into service reminders. It's a new feature. This is an add-on, this piece. But what we can actually do now is with our level 5 integration partners is we can identify oil changes and set the reminders up with you. We don't fully automate it. We automate this going into the queue. You can actually set these reminders up. Now, that's really cool. I love it. And I would talk about this a lot. But any of you on the inspection platform, especially, do have the ability to establish other kinds of reminders for your customer as well. And they can also be done internally. One thing I should have mentioned in the previous tip as well is you can add custom reminders for any customer or any staff member. So this is a great reason to have cell phone numbers in the tool. This trumps notifications for me big time because these are much more deliberate and they're usually about very important things. You can actually get the text message and you can set them for a bunch of different times, even outside of business hours. Employee responsible for picking up donuts the next morning, no problem. You can put that in here. Customers too. And this can get tied in inside of the DVI. So for following up with people, particularly tire shops, having the ability to make a tire rotation reminder on a certain date is right there within the tire inspection. We can show you where to set that up very quickly. That's all done in DVI sheet setup. On the tire inspection portion here, you hit the pencil and you can turn on the tire rotation reminder option right there. And now when you go into that reminders queue, you should be able to see any of those scheduled follow-ups for that individual, as long as you're looking in that date range for that to show up. I think it was going to be somewhere around here. It'll be in there after I close that ticket, actually, for this example.
That's still open.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the reminders queue can become very, very effective. And you do have a lot of flexibility within this, just like the service reminders piece. You can go in and you can make some changes to a lot of different things on these. You can see why it was selected. You can see all kinds of cool stuff, whether it's going out by email or text. I would strongly recommend you play around in that reminders queue a little bit further. Now, the last piece, and then we're up on time, is the scheduler itself. Now, once you have that scheduler link in your, and I'm going to back up one page here. I want to get back in here. Company setup, please check this in your company setup if you're an administrator.
Yeah, make sure you have that appointment link in.
Put the appointment link in there. If you're using our kiosk, it's as simple as clicking that link and we, boom, put your special link in there. But if you're using a different scheduler on your website, no problem. We can use any link that you're using for that scheduler. Yeah. And that's what makes that work up here. Now, when you're in the scheduler, we have all kinds of questions you can build. It all begins with that customer phone number, whatever means you're getting that link in front of your clients. And you can even have that link in a predefined outbound text. It doesn't matter. This is just straight up questions, service items, jobs with prices if you want to, and then the appointment intervals. And you have a lot of flexibility on how frequently and how soon a customer can make an appointment. Finally, they have this review page where you can have a full disclaimer. I'm not showing one right here. Customer can sign that and you're all set. So the kiosk setup, please take a look at that. Setup and options here. You can type out your own disclaimers, get your own legal advice on that. I don't have any. Different states, different mistakes.
Not our ball game.
Yep. But that is some of the best things that you can do in the tool. One final point I want to make, since I've talked on a lot of administrator functions, new in this release is the ability to add an additional administrator to your tool. Please feel free to explore that. Make sure they are a trusted member of your shop. It does give them some power, same power as your other admin account. Hope you guys enjoy that feature. Michael, are there any other items that we missed that we need to bring up?
Don't think so. It seems like we covered everything pretty well in our hour today. I'm just really happy.
A lot to cover. We actually touched on, I think, most of what we wanted to.
I am going to say, if anyone has any questions, I've got nothing in the Q&A, nothing in the chat. So if anyone does, this would be the last chance you have to ask.
We can hang out for a little bit here.
Trigger myself or anything.
Yep, absolutely. So remember though, on that follow-up point, and I've listed it here, the best time for the relationship with an auto repair shop and their client is when that client is not in the shop. Most of the time we see people, they're not having the best day. So the more you plan out with intent what your follow-up strategy needs to be, the better it's going to feel.
Exactly.
We had a question on if the recording is going to be posted. Yes, it is. And folks, on the recording piece, it does sadden me. Some of you may have already heard Scott Horn, one of our valued team members. He handled all the recordings, edited out all of our drafts. We lost Scott the week before Christmas. He passed away unexpectedly. It's really, really unfortunate. But our team still has Joe Boyd. He handles our recordings. And so he will be making sure that trend does continue where our webinar links will get posted. They will also end up on YouTube. We have the email list for all the attendees who registered. Everyone who registered will receive that. And we really appreciate everyone's time that you take to just fill out the registration and that you're paying attention here and looking to use the tool better. Really means a lot to us.
Also did have one other question from Ken to clarify. You can associate the vendors with each step of the DVI. Ken, no, you cannot. It can be associated with any step, but only one step can it be associated with.
That's correct. Yeah, you do not need to use it for parts is the point. It says vendor list because that was the intended function of the tool. We sort of, Michael and I kind of hijacked that.
On that. Like we do.
Yep. That's why trainers and devs work so well together.
Exactly. They love us.
Oh, yeah. We love them right back. Thanks, folks. Is there any final questions? You know how to reach us, and I will actually tell you one more time in case you don't. In the tool, you have the question mark button and you have support@autotext.me. You can reach us directly right there. We will reach you however you need to be reached. And folks, with that, I bid you a wonderful day. Great rest of your week. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks so much.